Howdy. Hi. Howdy. I thought I'd mix it up today. And then in this video, I'm going to read you Reddit stories. Mainly going to focus on some stories from the Scary Stories subreddit, but I might switch it up on a couple of them. This first story is called My Sister's Boyfriend Always Creeped Me Out. I'm going to share the story with a little disclosure. It's something I don't quite know what to make of. It's always something I don't fully understand, but it needs to be shared somewhere. This happened a few years back. I was fresh out of college, about to start a new internship at a local vet office. I was going to be working as a vet tech until I had the money to go to vet school and open my own practice. I was living with my older sister in her apartment. She was dating this guy that I personally didn't like. He was just so odd. He'd make this weird, cryptic comments about things and leave random belongings in the strangest of places. One time I found his pocket knife in one of my shoes by the door. Another time I found a dagger in my bed. It was just really unnerving. But you know how it is. You support family and you try to accept the weirdos they bring home for dinner. It's just that this weirdo was especially weird. He would make comments about my appearance, cook very strange meals for dinner, and watch odd TV shows that made me feel empty. So I tried to steer clear of him. But after he moved in, that became impossible. It was a week after he moved, and then the text began. Ellis, I see you. I rolled my eyes and texted back, nice try, loser. I didn't recognize the number. I like the green socks you're wearing. Green? Like your eyes. What the? I looked around. The hair on the back of my neck standed up. Was someone watching me? Yes, I'm watching you. Get ready for the big day. 10 days until showtime. And that was it. I stopped texting. But I couldn't sleep at night. I just kept rereading the text. Wonder what in the world was planned to happen in 10 days. Every day, I got new texts. Every day, they became darker, more threatening, until I started to feel repulsed by them. I'm going to. The text would detail the horrible things this person planned to do to me. I tried blocking the number, but they just texted on it with a new one. They sent pictures of bloody knives and daggers. I was scared, but too scared to tell anyone. I know. I should have gone to the police. I should have bought a gun. I should have told my sister. Anything. I know, but I was scared. I was paralyzed. On day 10, I couldn't sleep or close my eyes. I hid on my couch under a blanket and just waited. My sister was at work. Her weird boyfriend had left to visit his friends, and I was alone. In a locked apartment, hoping I'd make it alive. At 9 o'clock, the lights cut off. I was sitting in the pitch black, and the apartment was silent. At 9 o'clock at night, the lights cut off. I was sitting in pitch black, and the apartment was silent. I closed my eyes. Definitely felt the fight or flight response, and my response was freeze. I heard footsteps coming closer to me. I could make out a shadow in front of me, but I couldn't see who it was. I tried to move, but was frozen in fear. I started to cry. The figure moved closer, leaned into my ear, and whispered, "It's showtime." I closed my eyes as he placed a blade across my neck, and I said a silent prayer, begging for any mercy I could get. I waited for the pain. I heard the door open. My attacker froze, placing his hand over my lips. Ellis? It was my sister's boyfriend. Ellis, why are all the lights out? He started walking into the living room. I prayed for anything to get me out of the situation. It all happened so fast. The light from my phone flashed into my eyes. A dagger came down, planted itself into the neck of my attacker. And my sister's boyfriend began to violently stab the strange man. Ellis, get out and call for help. So I did what he told me. When the police showed up, they took the man into custody. It turns out he was some man who met me at work after I've given his dog some flea medication. I still don't know how he stalked me so seamlessly and what his intentions were or why. But I know one thing, my sister's weird boyfriend saved me. And now their wedding is this weekend. I couldn't be happier to call this man my brother-in-law. I think that one had a great twist. It was kind of building up from the beginning that it would be the weird boyfriend, but it was really just a strange man. So that one was fun. I found another one for us to read. This one's titled, "The Voices in My Head Told Me More Than I Wanted to Know." Sitting in my dorm room trying to get a paper finished, over work and lack of sleep, I have my mind so dazed I could barely focus on the computer screen. I decided to give up and put the TV on instead, when I felt sudden sharp pain in my head, like an ice pick was digging into my brain. Then I heard it. A woman's voice coming from nowhere. "Adam, come look at this," she explained. I continued to listen as the disembodied female voice spoke to the man she called Adam. "Look at the monitor. I've never seen activity like this," she explained excitedly. "Oh shit," I heard a surprised male voice say. "Need to alert the rest of the team." Just wait a second. I want to see what happens if I do it again." I could hear what sounded like typing, and then BAM! Shooting ice pick pain in my head again. This time, it was so bad my vision went completely white and my ears began ringing so loud I figured it would never stop. "Oh my god," the man's voice nearly shouted. "I've never seen this happen either. What did you do, Mara?" "This one still dreams. As far as I know, it's the only one that does. When it dreams, its auditory cortex spikes, much more than they usually do, as if it's actually listening, trying to listen to something in the real world. I thought maybe if I tried to trigger the same effect, we would see the response. And look, it's acting as if it's listening to something." Mara was speaking a mile a minute, clearly excited about what she had discovered. I jumped off the couch in a panic. "Hello? Who's there?" I began shouting. Adam looked at this, another spike. "It looks like it's trying to communicate with us," Mara cried. "What is going on?" the man cried out. "What is going on?" I cried out to the empty room. I tried to cover my ears, but nothing changed. Hi there. If you can hear me, think of a happy memory, okay?" Mara asked. I did as instructed, too shocked not to simply comply. "Very good. Look, Adam. Look at her hippocampus. Now, Mara." I was so excited that her voice was an octave higher than before. "Mara, come on, this is impossible. I can't possibly hear you." "It doesn't even have ears," Adam said. "Then maybe there's more to all this than science can explain." Mara stepped back. "Maybe this is proof of conscious beyond that of the senses. Maybe our bodies just use our five senses as a way to filter out extra information in our waking lives." She was practically shouting at him now. Been working on that theory for a while now, huh, Mara? Adam asked, as her sounding half condescending and half intrigued. Hello? I shouted. Can someone please tell me what is going on? Adam, look at the monitor. It's trying to communicate with us. These spikes are much stronger than the usual ones we've seen from other subjects. She's not simply interacting with the program. She's actually becoming aware. This has never happened before, Mara cried. Mara, it's not a she anymore. This is unusual, I'll give you that, but don't let yourself get too invested in this. It could just be a fluke. A fluke? Really? Are you not seeing what I'm seeing here, Adam? Absolutely freaking out now, I felt compelled to run. I ran outside and kept running as fast as I could. I could still hear some woman named Mara asking me to think of certain memories, and some guy named Adam arguing with her, but this time I ignored her request and just continued to run. I ran until I noticed something that stopped me dead in my tracks. I watched as a massive tree began to glitch in and out of existence, and then it was just gone. I watched as the entire world around me glitched in and out of existence, until I was left in complete darkness. Hello? I cried out. Nothing. I could no longer hear the two voices. I was alone, in a pitch black, empty void. I cannot describe to you the panic I felt in that moment. What on earth? I finally heard another voice say. Oh my god, she disconnected from the program. This time, it was Mara's voice that spoke again. How is this possible? Said the new voice I didn't recognize. I listened to the darkness as Mara tried to explain the experiment she had been working on, the one that had allowed me to hear their voices. But it doesn't have ears. It's just a brain in a box, the man said. As the overlapping voices continued, I realized the horrific truth. Having been disconnected from the program, as Mara had stated, I began to remember the horrific truth. There was a catastrophic event on Earth that had wiped out most of humanity. The minds of those whose bodies were dying were harvested and placed into boxes filled with cerebral spinal fluid to keep them alive. There were only a few ships capable of deep space travel at the time. Even if they found a planet to colonize, most of the people left alive would be too old to repopulate. Apparently, there were not enough resources on the ships to begin the process of repopulation until they found a suitable planet. They were keeping their minds alive, hooked into a virtual reality, a simulation of the planet before it was destroyed. They were attempting to regrow human bodies, hoping to use them as hosts for the living minds once they reached a safe planet. Apparently, I was the first to become aware of this, or to remember this, I should say. That I'm nothing but a brain inside of a box, waiting. I don't know why I didn't remember any of this, or what they did to me to make me forget. Unfortunately, it seems I can't forget again. I wish I could. The connection to my simulation was reestablished, and I found myself back in the dorm, staring at the TV. I wonder if there's anyone out there who knows the truth. That this world is a recreated simulation of the one we knew. That we are simply just brains in a box. Just waiting to be whole again. What happens if they don't find a new planet in time? What happens if the rest of the living humans die before we can be given new bodies? What happens if there's no one left to keep the simulation running? Will we be left floating through space indefinitely, trapped alone inside that void of blackness? That was it. I found this one really intriguing. Always like dystopian kind of stuff like that. I like this idea of just like brains being put into a box. I think it was a fun little twist. I found another one for us to read. This one's titled The Encounter. I encountered something that I can only describe as perverse and horrifying. I won't disclose my name because I don't want to be found by the government for what I've seen. I'm 24, I live in a small town in Michigan. One of those towns that are so small that everyone knows each other and you can walk to your local supermarket. A couple miles away is where you can go to find your fast food joints and restaurants. I didn't have a car at the time, so I usually would just walk the half a mile to the supermarket to pick up the necessities. The owner let me keep one of the shopping carts because he knew I didn't have a car and he trusted me to bring it back when I didn't need it anymore. Some people that weren't from the area thought I was a homeless guy when I'd be walking back from my house with that cart. They'd stop and roll their windows down, trying to hand me $5 bills. I'd have to tell them my situation, and some people were understanding, but most gave me weird looks and then drove off. This one day, I had a craving for McDonald's. I didn't have the money for an Uber, so I decided to go on a 2-mile walk there. I lived alone, so I didn't have anyone to ask to come with me. It was an hour or so before the sun would start to set, and I figured if I start walking now, I'd get there by dark, and I was optimistic that someone would be nice enough to give me a ride home when I told them how far away I lived. As I started my walk, I remembered a shortcut through an abandoned government experiment building. It would cut my walk down to about half, and I'd get to McDonald's right as the sun was setting. When I was a kid, me and my brother would sneak to the top of this building and smoke a joint or two. So I knew the building pretty well. When I arrived, I went through the broken part of the fences and entered the building. It was an old and decaying at this point, and the floor seemed to crack when I walked. I didn't think much of it until the floor broke from underneath me, and I fell. I hit my head, and when I came to, I couldn't see anything, which meant I was knocked out for a while, or I fell so deep into the ground that the sun didn't shine. The now gaping hole, I presume, was in the floor above me. I stood up and waited for my eyes to adjust. When they did, I could see glass jars all around me, filled with what I could only describe as animal parts, human organs, and extra parts. I immediately wanted to throw up. I just wanted to get out of wherever I was, which I'm presuming was the basement. I started walking around trying to find the stairs when I heard a low whimper. It sounded like it came from a little girl almost. I immediately knew I had to go help them. My mind was racing. How long have I been down here? Did they fall through the floor like me when I was exploring? My mind snapped back into present when I heard the door open. All the lights flickered on, and I quickly hid under one of the tables with the jars on it. I'm a pretty skinny guy, so fitting under it wasn't a problem. And it was one of those times I was thankful for being small. I remember thinking to myself, all these years I thought this place was abandoned, and come to find out it's still in use. Have they watching my brother and me smoke on the roof? Do they know where I live? My thoughts were interrupted by the man saying, "It's dinner time, freaks." I peered over where the voices came from, and I saw 3 cages with human-like animals in them. One weirdly looked like my older brother, who went missing 8 years ago. He asked me, "You want to go for a smoke?" I told him, "I have study for an upcoming math final." I may have been into smoking back then, but I was still a responsible kid, and I kept my grades up. My big brother was always the rebel, sneaking out, going to parties. He could never keep his grades up. He said, "All right, more for me then," and left the house. When I woke up the next day, he wasn't home. I asked my mom where he was, and she said I thought he was in his room. The next 2 days, we waited for him to come home, but he never did. My mom called the cops. They put out a missing persons report, and the whole town searched for him for weeks, but nothing came up. I mean, nothing. It was like he just vanished into thin air. I didn't tell anyone about us smoking at the abandoned government facility, so I went there myself. I looked for any sign he had smoked up there, but there wasn't anything. No lighter, joint, nothing. He didn't tell me of any other places he smoked. I only knew he smoked there. He was just gone. My brother had ram horns and a long lion's tail. His feet were hands, and it was freaky. The second cage looked like a little girl, but she had deer legs and antlers. The third cage was the worst of them all. There weren't any humanly features of any kind on this thing. I've read stories of wendigos and I've seen pictures. This thing looked exactly like it. I thought the stories were made up like fairy tales. One of the government workers threw a piece of raw meat in every cage except for the wendigo. He told the other worker to go get it, and in 5 minutes he came back with a human body. I was freaking out at this point, and I knew I had to get out of there. But before I could and crawl my way to an exit, another worker came down. She said, "There's a hole in the floor upstairs. Call maintenance and tell them to board it up when you're done. We don't want any unwelcome guests finding out about this." The two workers said, "Yes, ma'am," and finished what they were doing. As soon as the coast was clear, I ran up the flight of stairs and straight to the exit. I didn't stop running until I got home. I quickly started packing up all my things. I wanted to get out of this town as soon as possible. I called my parents, who had retired and moved to Florida. They got me a plane ticket and some money to get to the airport. The next day, I was on the plane, writing this from their house right now, hoping someone will find and save my brother. I don't know if he's the same brother I knew or if he's just a monster. I didn't tell my parents anything. I just told them some sob story about how I miss them, but didn't have the money to see them. I thought that one was really fun. I like these freaky experiment things. I feel like they've gained a lot of traction lately with obviously Stranger Things, and is it final season? So I like these government facility things. They always put out some fun stories. I found our last story for tonight. This one's just simply titled Movie Theater. I, 17 female, work in movie theater. I'm usually the cashier, but sometimes I have the responsibility of cleaning their theater. Anyways, one night my boss told me that I would be responsible for cleaning because some of the staff went home early. I was a bit annoyed because I was super tired and the time was already 12:30 at night, but I needed the money and I only needed to clean 3 theaters. I packed up my cleaning supplies and made my way to Theater 12. I opened the door and started sweeping up all the popcorn. I then started wiping the seats. I then used a bucket and threw away all the empty cups. After 15 minutes, I was done. I packed up my supplies and started walking towards Theater 16. I cleaned up all the spills and popcorn, grease that was on the seats. After 20 minutes, I was done cleaning. I then walked to Theater 4. I opened the door, started sweeping up the popcorn on the floor. As I was sweeping, I heard a giggling sound. Right when I looked up, the giggling stopped. I looked around, but I didn't see anyone. I then yelled, "Is anyone in here?" But no one answered, so I yelled, "No one is supposed to be here." I was getting annoyed but I decided to forget about it and started wiping the seats in the first row. After a few seconds, I heard the same giggling sound. I stood there and listened. At this point, I was pissed. The giggling sound slowly started turning into cackling. I was creeped out, but I was also mad. I yelled out in an angry voice, "Who's there?" But got no response. I started walking up the stairs, and as I was walking up, the cackling sound got louder and louder. As I was walking up, I was getting more and more scared. I started thinking of the worst scenarios. I was no longer mad because all the anger was replaced with fear. Right when I got to the 10th row, the cackling stopped. I was super freaked out. I held my breath so I wouldn't make any noise. I started to turn around because I was really scared and wanted to get out of the theater. Right when I turned around, I heard the cackling sound again. I turned back around and looked up the stairs, but I still couldn't see anyone or anything. It was too dark. I started walking back upstairs. Eventually I made it to the last row, which was row 16. There was a small gap between the seats and the wall. It was about a 1-foot gap. The cackling was so loud and obnoxious, I turned my head to look into the gap. It was dark, but I could still see the face of a creepy guy. He was crouched down and staring at me. He had a big smile on his face. Right when we made eye contact, he stopped cackling. He raised his finger to his lips and whispered, "Shh." After that, he loudly said, "Boo." Right when he said this, I screamed. He turned around, right down the stairs. He tried to grab me, but he missed. He chased me down the stairs. He was cackling and screaming. I eventually made it to the big wooden doors. I opened them and closed them in his face. I ran to one of the employees and told him about the man. The employee called the police, and a few minutes later the police arrived and went to the theater. 5 minutes later, the man came out with the cops. He was in handcuffs. The man was cackling and screaming. He was wearing dirty clothes and had greasy long hair. Turns out the man was a serial killer. He has killed 5 total people. He was planning on killing me too, but I escaped. I quit the job a few weeks later. I still have nightmares about that man. I'm just glad that I escaped. That one was pretty good. It was kind of real. I like the ones that are almost kind of believable. Obviously, I don't think a full-grown man can fit a 1-foot gap, but other than that, I think the story was good. I hoped you enjoyed this video. If you liked any of the stories, I will put all their names and tags and where I got them from in the description, so you can go find them and give them support. And if you liked this kind of content and want me to make more, show your support in some way. Liking, subscribing shows a lot for me, so